The CGI podcast is all about successful artists and designers sharing their personal stories and experiences to inspire you to take action. Learn from others and apply the shared wisdom to your own journey as you chase your creative potential. This is the CGI podcast. This is episode 8 with Edon Guraziu. Before we start the interview, I want to remind you to take a moment to subscribe to this podcast in iTunes and leave a review if you don't mind. All right, let's dive into episode 8 of the CGI podcast. Edon Guraziu is a concept designer based in the Nijmegen area of the Netherlands. He's done work for 20th Century Fox, NVIDIA, MPC, and many more. Edon specializes in designing firearms, robotics, and products for the film and games industry. His work offers a glimpse into a dark, moody sci-fi future full of functionally aesthetic designs. Edon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot, Will. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. How have you been so far?
I'm doing pretty good. Very busy with work, but everything is going fine, so I'm very happy to say that.
Excellent, man. It's really nice to have you on the podcast. I've been following your work for a number of years and probably came across it originally through Instagram. But now that I've seen your body of work through, ArtStation and we've chatted a few times in the past. So it's nice to find a block of time and connect over Skype.
Yeah, dude, definitely. I'm happy to be able to be a part of this podcast and have a good time.
Cool. So what I'd like to do with this is catch a few listeners up if they are not familiar with your background. I want to kind of pick your brain on a few topics. And, before recording this, I gave it some thought. And, between previous conversations and what I've seen online and stuff, something that I think you do is that you make decisions based on these gut instincts. And you seem like you've been able to kind of live life on your terms and get a lot out of it. And I think that's what's interesting here. So let's rewind and take it back to your education and perhaps even before that, like when you were a child, how did you spend your time? Have you always been real creative?
Yeah, generally I have been. And I think what also played a huge factor, is that my dad also could draw and paint really, really good. So what he would do is he would encourage me, not in a persuasive way at all, but, show me what is possible with the craft. And I totally loved it. And, my dad would show me his art books and he would teach me how to use aquarels and oils. And we would go set up a piece of canvas and learn. So that definitely has been a huge motivator. And next to painting and drawing all the time, I was also very curious and took everything apart and tried to recreate stuff with wood and household stuff. So I've always been this creative type, I guess.
Very cool. And so what exactly did your father do professionally? Was he an artist or was this just a hobby, or how did that come to be?
Actually, I don't really know where his creativity came from. But what I do know is that because I was born in Kosovo, right? And in 96. So at the time there was conflict, and my dad was actually in the military and the Central Intelligence. So everything took quite a turn, in his life and in my life as well, because I was, very young and came here. So to be honest, I don't really know what made my dad be such a good drawer and artistic wise. But yeah, it's something that I've remembered for all my life, that he could be, that he was a good artist. And I don't really know the origins of that, to be honest.
That's interesting. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but a lot of your work features products and characters and environments that sound like they could have been influenced a little bit by what you just described. Whether it's conflict or war or research or robotics and things like that.
Right.
Is there any way that those two were interconnected, or is that just by chance?
Mm, maybe it could have been subconsciously, right? Because obviously I knew that my dad was in the military, so and as a little boy, you always like guns and these kind of things. I think they're just like boyish things to like, and we would also play like like games in the neighborhood with like wooden rifles uh, and these kind of games. So maybe subconsciously because of what happened. Um, but later on, I still liked them, and I could formulate a reason for why I liked them. So maybe it's a combination. Yeah.
Sure, sure, that makes sense. So you did you move? I mean, you said you were born in Kosovo, right?
hmm
And then how long were you there?
I think like a year, something very
Okay,
short because right up, uh, right there. I mean, there was war,
right.
so we got out of there pretty quickly.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's awesome. I mean, it's terrible to have to experience that, but it's a very fortunate thing that you guys were able to relocate. Um, is that when you ended up in the Netherlands right after that?
Yeah, I think like we went with a bigger part of the family, and I think we first went to Switzerland into Basel, and I think like a couple of our family members stayed there, and we continued to the Netherlands. So, and that's where we stayed in our entire lives after. So,
Okay, cool. So you were really young then, so you didn't really start going to school until you were in the Netherlands, is that right?
exactly. So, I've been fully integrated into this Dutch system, I can say, and I think we at home we still spoke Albanian, right? But it was very mixed, like because I had to speak Dutch outside and in school, so. I think it was more a Dutch dominant kind of upbringing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you speak a number of languages right now?
Well, I speak Dutch, English, and a little bit of Albanian,
Oh,
but my Albanian vocabulary is not really extensive. So,
okay. And the other reason I asked that, and I don't know, maybe you know this, maybe someone else has told you, but I had looked it up, and the name Eden means wolf in French.
oh, really?
Have you heard that?
No, never. I mean, obviously, I did research into my own name, but I didn't know that it was a wolf in French. Um, the meaning that I know of my name and my last name is my dad told me that there's this old story about like a little place in Kosovo, and I think it's a tale, but whatever. And that like a big black marmor piece of rock dropped down from the mountain and then landed into this village, right? And and it basically meant black stone. And Gura means stone, and Ziu is black, so it's like black stone, my last name, right? And Eden or Edon, pronounced like Albanian wise, means being like it's hard to explain grammatically wise, but I think it's like being loved or loved one. So yeah, that's what I know of my meaning of my name.
That's interesting. So
Mm.
the name itself is a very short name, so you would think it's easy to pronounce, but it's not a super common one in the U or in English. So that's why I had looked up, and you're right. Those are the kind of the two pronunciations that you had mentioned, and on the same place that I had read that it said
Right.
meaning in French it means wolf. So perhaps
Well, that's
there's
cool.
another
Thanks
one
for
for
telling
you.
me.
Fun
Yeah, dude,
fact.
definitely.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I wish I had some sort of cool tale about my name, but no such luck. Um,
uh,
but okay, so you basically grew up going to school, like you said, in a Dutch society. So what's the schooling like? I know it's different than it is in the U.S., I believe. So what's the kind of stages or kind of different? I don't have a great word for it, but like how is it structured over there?
yeah, so basically you have I think, next to kindergarten, there are like three major types of like the pipeline is pretty simple. So first you have like primary school, and then you have like grade 1 to 6. or 1 to 8. I'm sorry. Like from 1 to 3, you learn to read and blah 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 and all this bullshit, and then in the middle grade from 4 to 6, you learn like different stuff, and then from 7 to 8, I mean, I guess you're turning like 12 or 11 or something, and then you go to high school, right?
Hmm.
And depending on the type of study that you do, you could be done at 16, 15, or even 20 years old, right? So if
Oh,
you
okay.
already know that you want to go like scientific and go to the you want to do like neurology or whatever, you'll go to like the to the type of high school that is tailored to that, and it also requires a higher intellect, etc., and higher grades. And then after you're done, I mean, you could be 18 or 20 or whatever, and then you go to like the university or study that you want to do. So that's basically it, and after that you can, uh, you can get your bachelor's or master's, whatever. So I think after the high school, it's pretty much universal,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, and that's what you described. You're right. Is quite similar. I think the main difference is that in the U.S., as far as I'm aware, all of the high schools are going to be 4 years the same. So everyone's graduating basically at the same age. Is
Hmm.
not dependent on what you study. And in a lot of schools, like at least in public schools, I only went to public schools, so that's all I know. But
Hmm.
they tend not to really focus on particular majors. Like you might choose to take certain classes if your school allows it, but people aren't usually getting very specialized until they go to college for that. So
All right.
similar, but just slight difference in the end. So, all right. So when you were in school, did you always take classes that were more arts based or design based, or what was your actual kind of educational path like?
I mean, I tried to do as much as I wanted, and to be quite honest with you, I didn't do shit in school. And like the type of school I was in, I also didn't really like it because it didn't offer much, art-driven lessons, etc., and classes. So that was kind of shitty. But what I did enjoy, and it was very focused on like manufacturing and technical stuff. So like if you want to be if you want to become a welder or whatever, there's like a huge workspace you can learn at. I really enjoyed being in the workshop because I could make whatever I wanted, and during the classes, we had to make like whatever, um, like a piece of like a metal candle. We had to blacksmith ourselves or whatever, and then I would quickly finish the project, and then I would go and do my own thing. I think I even made like a functional gun in the workshop at school, which is kind of controversial, right? But the teachers actually really liked it because it was a very intricate technical piece of woodcraft, and yeah, I enjoyed it very much being there. So.
That's pretty awesome. I definitely remember doing some woodworking and stuff in school. We had a shop class, but unfortunately, I don't know if this is everywhere in the U.S., but at least where I was, it really was the class that was taken by students who just didn't have good grades or did not plan on pursuing further education. So it had a pretty negative stigma that it was just a class for, the slackers.
Dude, that's so true. And let me tell you, like it's the exact same thing at my school. I mean, these were the types of people that didn't care, right? They'd become like a carpenter or whatever, and nothing wrong with carpentry. I respect their profession, but it's that stigma is very true. But I gotta say that the workplace was there, and it offered me all the tools and to do what I wanted in my spare time, or like in the time that I had after my project was done. So I used it, right?
Yeah, that's good. And unfortunately, in that case, it's like it can become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy if the professors or the teacher is doesn't take it seriously, and it sometimes sucks because they get sometimes the most difficult students, who just become combative and are just like, oh, I'm just here to because I have to be. Um, but that's really cool that that you were able to make the most of it. I do think to anyone who has a future in design, learning some basic level of mechanics, whether it's just from understanding how power tools work, or hand tools, or construction, or
Hmm.
manufacturing processes, it carries a ton of weight. It's really, really good for anyone who wants to make things down the road. So, our
It's a good foundation, definitely.
cool. So you took care of those, and then also found time to foster or pay attention to your inner curiosity. It sounds like.
Exactly. Like I would touch everything in the shop and experiment with it. And I was, I also was very fortunate that the teachers that I had that they allowed me to do that stuff. Because normally you would have to be supervised, and you can't just grab the welder and do something. It would have to fit into the curriculum, et cetera. You're in currently, but I didn't have to pay attention to those, and yeah, like I didn't really enjoy it at school, but that was the place where I could like, you know, be myself, do what I wanted, and that's kind of nice.
That is okay. So how long were you were in school? Because you didn't end up staying there for as long as some of your classmates, right?
Yeah, that's right. I finished at 16. I know, I think I finished at 15, right? And then I became 16 in the summer vacation. And then when I was 16, I started the visual game design study, and I did that for 2 years. Um, and in that place, I also quit there. I quit there early. After 2 years, the study was supposed to be four. Um, so I do have a high school. I did graduate high school, but not the other study that I did, which is fine. I don't care. I don't care for the papers. But what I did study at the game design study was they would like basically I was looking for a place just like Art Center or something, right? But they don't have that here. So after some searching, oh yeah, and the Art Academy. I've always wanted to go to the Art Academy, but I found out later that it was more towards fine arts, right, and not really industrial driven design. And so that was a kind of a big disappointment because we have one, we had one very near my home at the time, and I would always walk there, and I dreamed about joining the Art Academy, but then I was like, screw that. So that was interesting to realize. So then what I did was during that study, we learned how to make like game assets, right? Because it was the closest thing I could find next to Art Center, these kind of courses. And it taught me 3D, it taught me Photoshop, and actually, it gave me a pretty good basic fundamental knowledge about the tools that are needed to pursue this kind of career. And after 2 years, I was starting to get like small gigs, and I said like, screw it. So I dropped out of school, and that was before my 18th birthday. So I got into some trouble because everyone is required to go to school until 18. So I had to go through like a 6 month probation kind of thing. Like someone would come to my home and check up on me if I wasn't doing any drugs, that kind of shit. And but I mean the woman that came to my home to check on me, she was very nice, and she knew that I was, she knew my goal, and she supported that fully. But it was purely a thing of bureaucracy to get me through that punishment, so to speak. And then after that, I started fully working full time.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot in there, man.
Yeah.
I mean that's cool to kind of see the whole chronology, so to speak, of kind of what you did and how you got from being a student in school who was maybe not super interested in what you were doing to already kind of working and doing freelance. But I want to rewind it a little bit and kind of pick some of that apart. So
Sure.
first thing was you had mentioned that so you wanted to attend a school like Art Center or something like that. How did you know that that exists? Like, how did you come across that or learn about that?
Hmm. It kind of like when I graduated high school, it was kind of like what happened was I was drawing all the time, and I was very active doing drawing and making things. And when I got into high school, that stopped for a little bit, and especially in the final year, you got like whatever exams you have, and um, and then what I did was I found out that I didn't want to do any um, I didn't want to do anything like normal people do, right? I wanted to get back into arts. I had some trouble explaining myself there because I was just like kind of lost in thoughts. But back when I graduated, what I then did was I did a lot of research because people graduate, they want to search for a university to study or whatever, and I did the same. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to do art, concept art for games, whatever. So I kind of knew the terms because back when I was very young, I would watch Spider-Man 2 in the cinema with my dad, right?
Hmm.
And that movie was so cool for me. And I would like go on YouTube, on the internet, and go search up on. I would search all about Spider-Man, and then I uh, would get whatever magazine I could get from the kiosk that had Spider-Man 2 in it, and I would, reference it and try to make my own Spider-Man mask out of fabric, and I would try to use glasses to make the lenses. So all these things already started at a pretty young age. I wanted to make stuff and design stuff. And then I found out about arts or a concept art, and that's what came closest.
Okay,
So yeah,
so the internet was more or less the vehicle. After you were inspired by seeing a film or maybe multiple films, you would take into the internet to do more research and see how you could kind of as a hobbyist start creating more stuff, right?
yeah, that's right.
And I guess we should mention this too for the audience. You're actually fairly young right now. How old are you?
Right now I'm 20.
That's nuts. Okay, so the other thing is, I know a lot of listeners to this are different ages, but quite a bit of them I think are older than you actually. So that kind of serves as a reminder that you've had access to the internet, and that sounds like it's helped quite a bit in whether you're doing research or kind of making decisions or learning or all that stuff. So okay, so you found out what concept art was. You learned, there were places that were actually educating people on it.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what steered you in the direction of studying game design, right?
Yeah, that was kind of, yeah, after I found out that the game design study was the closest thing that came to Art Center or anything like that, I was kind of forced to go there,
I
right?
see, I see.
Like if I had a bunch of money, I would go abroad and study like a cool thing, but I couldn't. So I had to do what I had to do. And but I do have to say that once I was in the game design study, I met a couple of people who were also just like me, just using that study as sort of a gateway to get closer into the industry and not necessarily be there for what the purpose of the study was, like game asset creation. And I met this dude, and his name is Willem van Lelyveld, and he became a good friend of mine. And he introduced me to FZD and Scott Robertson and these kind of things. And he would kind of mentor me, because he was, I think, like a class or two above me. And he said like look up the draw through of Scott Robertson and look at the Feng Zoo Studios and or the videos, and dude, like a whole world opened for me. So what I wanted was reinforced like 1,000 times just by seeing how awesome everything was, right? So I learned about more resources. I learned about all these people that are so good, and I definitely want to attribute the quick progress that I made to my friend Willem, who recommended me all this information, and also the internet because it helped me reach the information faster.
That's really cool. Did so you were working through your classes and then also kind of balancing or juggling your interest in these other areas too, a little bit more concept or product design type courses, I guess. Did so when you were doing the game asset courses, what were they teaching, and what tools were you supposed to be learning then, and what were the courses like?
Um, so basically, what happened is, and even for like a game asset creation study, I found that um, it was not really proficient, or it wasn't really up to date to the industry standards. So we had sculpting classes, for example, and they were using Mudbox, And I
Hmm.
mean, there's nothing wrong with Mudbox, but this wasn't when ZBrush wasn't around.
Hmm.
ZBrush was already around, and it was a proven better system. So I was like, why aren't we learning the right tools? So what I would end up doing is I would get an educational license or whatever I could find, and do everything in ZBrush instead of Mudbox, because I knew that Mudbox would die, and it has, I think. So this is also what I did for the 3D modeling classes. We had to buy, like, first, before the study started, we got like reference sheets with information about the study and what we need. And in those reference sheets, there were, like, Windows machines and laptops that were, like, super cheap and would break easily from what I knew. So I went against the stream and bought a MacBook, right? And when the 3ds Max classes started, I couldn't install Macs. So the teacher said, like, hey, okay, you got a boot camp. I'm like, no, I'm not got a boot camp. So with these decisions that are going against the grain of the study, right? It forced me to install Maya and figure out everything on my own, and that's what I did for the majority of things during the study. So basically, basically what happened was I was forced to study because of my age, and I will give credit to the school that it taught me the fundamentals of 3D and Photoshop, et cetera, et cetera. But in the end, I had to accommodate everything myself in terms of learning the way I want to.
Okay, so did you know at the time when you made your computer purchase, did you know that that was going to steer or perhaps influence your software choices or options?
No, at the time I didn't know it. At the time, the only pure reason that I was buying a MacBook instead of these cheap Asus, $500 laptops was, I knew that, after 1 or 2 years, those Windows machines were, they were also made of plastic, and I just don't like the general way the Windows machines are made, and I very much loved the aluminum billet body of the MacBook. So already there, I cared so much about about design, and I loved the industrial feel of it. I love Mac OS, and at the time it was purely. Oh, and by the way, I still use that MacBook.
Wow.
I think it's like a 2011 MacBook, and it's still around, and it's still being gamed on. Not by me, but by a buddy of mine. So it's still going strong, and that could have never happened with that cheap $500 Windows machine, right? So that's why I made that decision back then, and I didn't know what problems it would give me on school.
That's okay. So that's interesting. So that's what I wanted to find out if it was like a strategic move or just kind of the way it's just kind of a gut instinct, I guess,
Mm.
kind of reaction. But okay, so you're following along with the classes and you were delivering assignments, I assume, but just in different programs, right?
Exactly. Like if for 3D class we had to deliver a plane. It didn't state in what program it had to be made, right? Like the final asset that has to be delivered is the plane. So I got them a plane regarding a program.
So that's
Yeah.
interesting because I can imagine some classes that I could see how that could backfire, in some places where they require that you turn over certain file formats and whatever. But it sounds like, I mean, was there no issues with that? Like, were they none the wiser, or did they just accept your projects as they were, or was there some type of backlash for essentially using different programs?
Well, the funny thing was that And I mean, like for the assignments, and back when we started out, right? Like we were only making very simple stuff. We were making like a little textured, low poly mobile game assets, So it's a bunch of quads with low res textures on them, and all you have to do is provide the OBJ or a render, right? So very low requirements. So it really didn't matter what you used, and it is funny um, that a friend of mine, like a classmate, he was also starting to use Maya. So I kind of like transformed uh, what programs were going to be used in my class, at least from what I know, and people loved it. And this dude, his name was Nick de Bucker. This guy is absolutely crazy. He isn't really active on social media, but this dude knows the most about Maya and Max and Unity and all these things I've ever known. And this guy's working in Malaysia right now for a studio. But it was so funny to go against the grain of the school and have other people, follow along. And
Was that a classmate or
yeah,
the teacher?
no, that was a classmate,
Okay.
and as more people started to use Maya as well and ZBrush, etc., um, the the classes kind of changed, or like the teachers were more accepting of
Mm.
the programs and resources that we used. So
So it sounds like the program was just a little bit antiquated, and no one took the energy to, or took it upon themselves to make those changes. But it seems like influence from the internet, from successful artists, other people, just that seems to have kind of been the catalyst, and then some of the classmates just picking up the other programs.
exactly. So the students were evolving the class and the old school system, right?
Mhm.
So which I think is a very good thing, but also shows that whoever is creating like the programming for school and decides what is going to be taught and what not, they could have been a little more up to date, right? Because teaching old school ways of doing things and teaching old programs when everyone knows that the industry standard has changed is not really a good thing. But that's that. We're past that point right now.
Right.
I don't care.
That's cool. So you were studying, and then you said you took kind of a break, like a summer vacation, or school was out for a period of time. Uh, and then was it over? You said it was after one of those breaks that you decided to no longer attend?
No, it was. I remember it was on a Tuesday. I just
Oh.
decided not to come back. Right, so so I went home and my journey started. Right, so I think it was in June, and I went home and I worked day and night on my portfolio, like literally. No parties, no nothing. It was just me in my room behind my desk doing work and posting online all the time. It was Facebook already. And I was already a little bit familiar with industry people on Facebook at the time. And all I did was post work and post work. And that was until December
Wow.
of 2015. And I got offered a job at Star Citizen game for the Foundry 42 studio. So that's how it started all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I want to get into that, but I'm going to pull you back a little bit because you made another jump. And I want to know a little bit about how you made that decision, why you woke up on a Tuesday and said, I'm done with this. What happened the night before on Monday or whatever? Like something had to happen there because that's not a light decision. And I know your schooling is a little different out there, but like, students, it happens all the time here where you're on a path and then there's a pivotal moment. And I'm curious as to what that was for you.
hmm Well, I mean, it's not like it was an abrupt change. Like, okay, maybe it was a little bit in terms of, oh, he's not showing up on school anymore. What happened? So it was kind of like that. But I gotta say, like in the weeks or month prior, I started skipping classes more and more
Ah,
because I was just being fed up going to the classes were not irrelevant to me, right? Why would I go learn scripting in Unity if I'm never gonna touch the program? Like I don't see what benefit that has. Like why aren't the classes tailored to what someone wants, you know? And I do understand that in a school system, if they provide a certain degree, it needs requirements. Like you need to be able to do this and that. But man, like I wish there was a study where you could do what you wanted, excel in those areas, and try and be successful, you know, without any guarantees. Because to be fair, a piece of paper diploma doesn't guarantee shit, you know,
Hmm.
nothing. I mean, how many people have diplomas and can't find a job?
Many.
Too
Hmm.
many people. So in my opinion, you should be able to be free to do what you want and really follow your passion and pursue it, and not get drowned by a system that it's the only reason of a system is bringing a person from A to B into society. That's everything. But it doesn't guarantee a job. It doesn't guarantee anything. So I don't like it, to be honest. But I did what I did, and yeah, I'm happy I did it. No
Okay.
regrets.
Yeah. That makes sense. So when you stopped going, you mentioned that there were actually repercussions for that, and that is a little bit different here. You know, a lot of students here they pay to go to school, college, and all that. So if you don't show up one day, no one cares. You're like forgotten about. So it sounds like it's definitely a little bit different over there. What were those kind of repercussions? You kind of talked about it earlier, but um,
Mhm.
how does that go about? Like, did somebody contact you, or does somebody report you, or how does that happen?
Well, this is what happens. So everyone needs to go to school until they are 18, till their 18th birthday, and after that, you're considered an adult and you can do whatever you want, right?
Oh, okay.
And I was skipping classes, and um, there's this there's this bureau that deals with teens not going to school, because it's mandatory. And eventually, what happens is, um, you have to go to the judge, and the judge will give you a sentence, whatever sentence that might be, for some, but like some people, maybe they slack and they do drugs outside of school, or turn alcoholic or whatever. Like for them, there's specialized help, right? Like you get a sentence, so you get like punishment, and then you have to get your shit together,
Hmm.
etc. But for me, the same system applied to me, but my intentions were good. I wanted to improve my life, and uh, I did what felt was the right thing, and I got punished by the system. So I totally understood what I did, and decided to do it anyway. And I accepted the sentence, and I got like this half year probation kind of thing where a person will check on me every week or something for like a half a year to see what I'm doing. And everything went fine because that person, she knew exactly what my goal was, and supported my decision fully. And the only thing, again, that stood between me and my goal was bureaucracy. So yeah,
So you were young then. You were what? You said
well,
16?
17.
17. That's crazy. So was that like in generally speaking? Because like I remember the first time, like when I was younger, I don't know, I was 18 or something. I got like a speeding ticket in my car. Like, and it was like, it's the first time something that happens like that where you're like not trying to do something dicey, but like anytime the law's involved, it's like scary or intimidating. Was that a kind of a scary moment for you, or did you know exactly what was coming ahead of time?
Well, I didn't know about the sentence. I did know that eventually, because I was skipping so much, that eventually consequences would come.
Okay.
And I didn't know exactly what the sentence would be that the judge would give me. Um, but you know what? Like I was so confident in what I did was right, and I didn't harm anyone. I'm not harming school. What's great? Like I'm paying school. I should be able to do whatever the heck I want. Who is school to tell me I didn't show up? Like I don't care, right? It's my life, and it sounds very edgy to say that, but it's so true, man. Like I don't want to waste time of my life doing something I don't want, and it's as easy as that. And no one can force me to do something I don't want. And I think everyone should know that. And of course, there are obligations in life. I know, but I have zero regrets, and if I had to make the decision again right now, I would do it without hesitation. Nothing. So yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, I share the same point of view in
Mhm.
that, we're only here for so long, and you got to make the most of it. You should be happy doing what you're doing, because we've all seen people who are much older who never followed that dream, and they just
Yeah,
that's I I'd rather go through the toils of following a passion and then falling on my face and then getting back up, whatever. Like that's better than just passively watching your life go
for
by.
sure, for sure. Yeah.
Were there were there so let me just to get this straight. So the person who came in and kind of checked up on you, how
Mhm.
much of their regular checking in on you and the kind of court ordered sentence by the judge, how much of that fueled your those months that you spent building your portfolio? Because it seems to me like that's almost like this crazy level of accountability that was probably an extra good layer.
That definitely might be true. Definitely, it was another factor to prove myself even more that that my decision is the right one, right, and that they are wrong and that I'm right. Um, and I think the first couple of times when this person came in to check on me, we had like this talk about how we would proceed for the next 6 months and everything, and I was very kind of defensive and not happy about things because I wasn't happy at all with the court sentence. But when I came to learn this person a little bit better, to know her a little bit better, she was very supportive, and she just came checking on me because she had to, it was her job. And I even told her, like, she even told me, like, hey, like, I know that I don't really need to come. Like, my time is better spent checking on someone that does need it, but it's the way it is. So again, like, the system is so stupid. Like, they don't look at specific situations to see if it's needed, but they'll just sentence you out, and you'll have to deal with it, and that's fine.
Got it. And then one last thing on this topic, and I was just curious, were there any consequences within your family? Like, did your parents react to this situation? Were they supportive or not so? Or
Mm.
how
So I mean, it's an interesting story because they want to support you and then also don't. They'd rather see you become like a surgeon or whatever. Like, it's a crazy thing, to be honest, that they can impose that on someone's life. But what happened? So they did like that I was into arts and everything, and but to make money from drawing for a game, no way, right? It's out of their reality. It's they don't know shit. You tell them, you give them sources, you hold your laptop in their face, showing what someone is making or whatever, or what is possible, and they just don't fathom it. And so what happened was, when I told them that I stopped with school, they said, like, no, if you want to live here, you need to go to school. And I said goodbye. So what I did was, my best friend, who I met at high school, his dad, a very chill person, and they became like sort of a second family, right? And very good friends of mine, and I've known them for like 10 years now already. And so when I left home, my friend's dad, he said, like, hey, dude, like, if you want to come, I have a spare room, you can rent it. So that was perfect. And I rented that room, and I did everything from there. So that's really how it went.
Wow, and it sounds like, I totally understand what you're saying. It sounds like your parents were coming from a place of love. Like they didn't want to see
Sure,
you do
sure, yeah.
something, make a rash decision, because at that age it's pretty tough to know what's right, despite it working out for you. For a lot of
Mm,
other students or people, teenagers making those decisions, it can be tough. And so I can understand where it's like your parents were probably just trying to protect you, so so you would
Yeah.
have a good future, one where you're not struggling to make ends meet. But all that aside, it's like you, as you said, you kind of took things, uh, and it sounds like it's really fortunate that you had the support of your friends' family.
Yeah, definitely. Very much so.
Okay, cool. So at this point, we understand kind of what it took for you to kind of start your journey. So you spent how long did you say? A number of months just chipping away at your portfolio?
From June till December.
That's
Yeah.
pretty hardcore. And you just like tunnel vision, focused on that?
Tunnel vision, do whatever you can. Yeah.
Cool. And has it always been a part of you? Like, have you always been able to just focus and just do things for long periods of time, or did it take finding this really important thing for you to pour yourself into it?
Well, I don't think I'm any more special than anyone else because if you go to the doctor and you find out you have stage 4 or stage 3 cancer or something, like all of a sudden you get your ass up to work out, right?
Sure.
Or do whatever you can to fix it. So in a way, it's not like I have this huge discipline to do that shit. But it was a very important point in my life, right? Like either I get into the industry and get a job and support myself or not, right? And all that happened prior to that would have proven my wrong to all those other people that told me no, right? So it was everything or nothing, and I gave it my everything, and it worked out.
But I believe there's one thing there though. I think there's an ingredient. You can tell me if I'm, out of my mind or whatever, but it sounds like you actually believed that this is what you were going to do, that you could make it happen. Like, I think that had to have been there. Otherwise, because in my own experience, I've done things where I tried pretty hard, but I think I've come to learn that anytime there was any shade of doubt in my own mind in what I was doing, it never works. And I think the only
Mm-hmm.
time something, I stick the landing or something pans out the way I wanted it to
Yeah.
is because there wasn't that creeping fear of doubt. Like I wasn't bullshitting myself or whatever, like I did believe it was going to, I just took it for granted that something was going to work out.
Yeah.
Would you say that was part of the ingredients?
Definitely, and this is a very important point that you're bringing up, Will, because one of the most important things, and confidence is good. Overconfidence, can be very dangerous. But one of the key factors is being able to visualize for yourself how you're going to tackle things and how you're going to see yourself doing the thing you want to do. If you're able to visualize it in your brain, in a way, it already turned into reality because you simulated it in your brain and it works out, and then you take the steps to accommodate and realize it. So definitely, if I would have just been like, hey, I'm gonna make a couple of portfolio pieces here and there and see who's going to hire me, that's a terrible attitude, right?
Yeah.
That's a terrible attitude, and you need to stop right away and reflect again. So being able to visualize and know clearly what you want. You have to be able, if you know what piece of candy you want before you walk into the candy store, and you know where to walk and where to pick it. Is it wrapped in foil? Do we need any other obstructions to overcome? No, you know what to do when you go into that candy store and grab that piece that you want. And
So,
that's what I did.
so
So
what were you thinking? I mean, do you remember what you were visualizing, what you were like what that goal was when you were working on the portfolio? Was it clear to you at that point?
now one of the things that I had like very, before I started to put in the effort of actually doing the work and building the portfolio and the body of work, what I would do is like in my youth, I would look at Lord of the Rings, and I would look at the behind the scenes of a lot of movies. And, like, for example, I came to learn of Weta Digital and Weta Workshop, and it was just so amazing what they did, right? Like, and that is what I wanted to do. So I could already visualize myself like, hey, maybe one day I'll be in that studio or working for them or whatever. And this is what I did. But I have to say that that excitement to join a studio kind of faded for me, to be honest. Um, it was definitely one of the biggest drivers when I started out, because you need a place to look at, and you need a desire, right? But now it's more like I've started to get my own ideas and things that I want to do, and not necessarily follow another company or a different IP. So now the work really has turned into work, right? And ultimately, my vision for Edon Tech Industries, that's like the company I came up with, and what I've been trying to push is that I want to work out of that company and not be the person to not be affiliated when something comes out. You get what I'm saying? Like, let's say you make a rifle or a product or a robot or something, right? And it gets played all over or bought all over for different purposes. I don't want to I don't want to be lost. I want people to know where that design came from, right?
Yeah, yep, yep.
That's what I want ultimately, I think. And that's in terms of uh the affiliation and recognition.
Sure.
That's what I think would like. Yeah.
So there's a few things there. It sounds like. I mean, the first thing that I get out of that is your answer to my question about what was fueling you, and where was your end goal when you were working on your portfolio. It's that you did start out with a pretty crystal clear idea of, like, Weta Workshop or their teams over there, being part of a something that awesome that was fueling you in the beginning. But you also
Mhm.
recognize that evolved over time, which I think is what's going to, change is inevitable, and that's going to happen. Your ideas, your goals, everything, they will change and evolve. And
Yeah.
it seems like you kind of rolled with that. And the second part there is coming up with the Edon Tech Industries. It's like creating something a little bit bigger than just yourself. Like and a number of artists do this, and I think it's quite cool. It's allowing yourself to come up with an entire world, a fictional character, maybe a fictional
Right.
company, an entity, whatever, something that's bigger than just a standalone fragmented idea that you can keep building and building and building. Um, it's a nice little way to kind of create a body of work that is branded and stands alone and is good. But at the same time, you're saying that this allows you to not get lost in the anonymity of being part of a studio or something like that.
Exactly. And I'm not only talking fictional here. I've actually, my actual company is called that way. And so whatever Edon Tech Industries, and what I want to do is whatever design solution I provide for any future client, or it doesn't have to be all of them. If I work on a movie, for example, I'll just do the work, get paid, and that's it. But if I'm talking about some larger scale things, like a real product or something, um, I want Edon Tech Industries to grow outside of my personal reach, kind of thing, right? I want people to, if I provide a design, I want people to know like where it came from, and I think that's a really reasonable thing to want, because you also, and this is my projection, and also I've also had experience in this regard, actually. So there are companies. Let's say you're making a product together. Either the company is paying you for the design and wants no affiliation whatsoever with you anymore, right? So they want to slap their big ass logo on the product and roll with it and take credit for everything. And like in a way, I can respect this. That's fine. Um, if you're buying a house, you don't want the carpenter's brand all over, right? So I definitely understand. Um, but in some ways, that should come with a cost. Um, I don't think it is a very bad idea if on like somewhere little on the product it would say designed by Edon Tech Industries. Like it can be whatever brand product it is, right? But the design has come from somewhere, and I don't think it's right to lie or to hide where this has come from, right? And I feel that if people want no affiliation or don't want to give the credit, it's going to cost more. So that's my thought on it. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, I mean, have you? I mean, you hinted at this earlier, but I take it that you've experienced this already. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, like, in good ways and also bad ways. Like,
Sure.
currently, I have a product that's out there in the real world, and it's the muzzle brake design, and it says Edon Tech Industries, and it's very clear. It's a collaborative project between the manufacturer and me, the design,
Hmm.
and it looks great. On us, it looks great engraved on the product, and I'm very proud of the design. And why shouldn't people know where it came from, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's been a while since I've done any design kind of as an independent designer, but I did experience that, and I know what you're talking about, and the funny thing is when somebody's name gets big, you pay more to get their name on a product or a designer. So let's look at like a limited line of fashion or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a race car drive. How much does it cost to get Daniel Simon to design something? And if you do, who in the right mind is going to not mention that? It's like in some cases it's a giveaway because somebody has such a
Strong
distinct
language.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah, design language. But at the same time, yeah, it's ironic that that companies usually it's usually one of two things. I think if the designer's personal brand is really really strong, almost to the point of where it's more recognizable than the brand who's hired them, then that company's going to want to leverage that designer and their brand. But if
Yeah.
the company itself is quite large and they're hiring out, young, fresh talent, basically a name that nobody knows, they're going to want to bury that. And I think it's just a matter of if they see a gain or a personal benefit by giving credit, they will. But if it doesn't suit them, they won't. And to your point, yes, I think that should always come with quite a high cost because that means you can't show that in your portfolio. It doesn't go in your resume, nothing. And that for any independent designer, that's the lifeblood of one job to the next is kind of what you've done. And if you can't share what you've done, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, and obviously, there are many sides to this and many different situations, and I totally understand if it's not appropriate on a type of product or a type of design, but um, generally, what I mean mostly is if there is a company that wants to build a product, whatever it is, right? And I'll be the one to design the product that they are going to sell. Um, I think like, what if it gets made like 5 million times, 5 million copies, right, in the world? I'm just,
Hmm.
giving a big number, but like it just doesn't sit right with me to see 5 million copies out in the world with the company logo on it that is selling it, but the person who is responsible for the design goes unnoticed. And I know that this is an issue that everyone experiences. And if I could in any small possible way, I would like to make a difference in that. Because there's no shame whatsoever to promote who built it, right? I mean, it would be the same. I'm not prohibiting the company of putting their logo on something I designed, right? In that same project. It's kind of weird, but yeah, we'll have to see how that goes in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting topic, like you said. Are you are you then basically would you say that you're making a push to try to stay associated with every project that you do in one way or another?
Well, again, like there are appropriate situations and less appropriate situations. It would be weird if, let's say, for the work I do for NVIDIA, right,
Hmm.
for the designs I'm making, it would be very weird if I would call them up and be like, "Hey, I thought about things. I want my logo all over the stuff I'm designing." That's just ridiculous, right? So I totally agree that it's there's only a place for that, on the right situations. But like the name is not really a big issue, to be honest, because let's say the work I did on NVIDIA, hopefully people will recognize it's me, or like the style and then go search up who did what, and so I'm sure that one way or another I'll get my recognition, absolutely. But on a bigger theme, I think it's definitely good for people to maybe push a little more to get the recognition something deserves, especially if it's a main concept or the actual design that a company is selling to people,
Sure.
right? So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. So right now, you kind of you earlier in the conversation, you took us on a bit of a journey through your education, and you took us
mhm.
up into the point at which you left school, you worked hard on your portfolio, and then you got a job offer. Is it right that you got contacted, you didn't reach out to them first?
That's right. And I don't think I ever sent an application out, so I've always got work,
Okay.
uh, which I'm very lucky to say. You know, Definitely not something I want to brag about or anything, but I'm just saying that I never sent an application. So,
Okay. So with this, and this is Star Citizen, it's a AAA game, right?
oh yeah,
Or
yeah.
title. And this was the first thing you worked on. So did you work as a concept artist, meaning were you supplying the designs, or were you working on like production assets? What was your involvement?
So basically, what I did was nothing asset based, nothing usable, at least from my end. So what I did was I was responsible for designing the first person weapons that were going to be included in the campaign, and as well as other hard surface designs, but mainly concept. So I would do it in 3D, make my renders, and then provide them with renders and whatever 3D I had available. So.
Okay. So you were more or less providing the blueprints for those who are going to bring them to life in the game environment, it sounds like.
Exactly. So, I would finish a gun and I would send them my 3D model that isn't asset ready in any way, shape, or
Sure.
form. And then like a modeler would retopo it, then another guy would texture it, et cetera, et cetera. So go
So
through the pipeline.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you got contacted by, uh, was it a different company who created Star Citizen? It's
So this is my understanding of it. You have Cloud Imperium games,
okay.
and they're based, I think, in Germany and LA, etc. And then you also have a studio called Foundry 42, and
That's
they
right.
are based in Manchester, UK, and they're responsible for like the campaign side of things. So they're all like under the same hood, right? Under the
Mhm.
same company.
Okay. So what was it like when you got that first? I'm assuming it was an email. Somebody just shot you an email about opportunity.
Yeah. Their art director reached out to me, and he wanted to know if I was available, and of course I was, right? So I was very excited about that, and we did like a meeting, and soon after I started. I think I started officially in January 2016. So,
Okay, so
oh,
did
2015, yeah.
right, right. Did so first off, like what was that like? I mean, were you surprised by the email? Were you expecting that someday you would get contacted, or was it I mean, would you have just kept working away at your portfolio if you didn't get that email? I mean, what was that like?
Mm, yeah, definitely it wasn't planned to get an email in December, right before the new year. But I mean, at one point, if you keep doing work and you keep improving, at one point, um, you have to recognize that you're probably good enough to work, to provide a service somewhere, whether that is an indie studio or AAA studio, whatever. So I did know that, at one point, probably I'll get hired, right? I didn't know by what studio or for how long or whatever, but I was very lucky to be able to get that gig and work for 8 months straight
Wow.
until I left.
So,
So,
so when you were working on your portfolio, because this is where a lot of people struggle. So I'm gonna get a little granular here. Um,
hmm
did you ever feel like month after month after month it was taking too long? Did you feel either doubt or discouraged, or were you enjoying the process enough that you just were okay moving forward?
well, definitely I was okay with, enjoying the journey.
Okay.
And also, one thing that is very important to know is that, I mean, ultimately you go in with an end goal of like, hey, I need work. Um, but this is only because we live in a world where we need money to live, right?
Sure.
So, but at the same time, I did it because I wanted to get better. Like, it was my passion, dude. Like, I wanted to create those concepts. I wanted to uh, be better and increase my understanding and knowledge of everything. So that was like, I think, if not even a bigger factor than the fact that I had to find work to live.
Okay.
So,
So, and that was the other question was, were you doing any type of work? Like, how were you able to pay for food and to rent a room and stuff like that at that time?
well, what I did was at the time I worked at a pancake restaurant as
Okay.
a chef. So that
Okay.
was pretty cool. I did that for like 2 years. First, I started in the dishes, and then I moved up my way in the kitchen, and then I was making desserts and everything, and then I was standing behind uh, seven how do you call them? The gas pits, whatever. The
Oh, like a burner on a stove?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there were 7 pans that I
Ah,
had to manually make pancakes in. So that was kind of nice. So I did that for like a year and a half, 2 years. So that provided me with some cash to do the things I needed to do with. But also during those months of portfolio creating, I got like a few little gigs here and there from indie people, right?
sure.
Like, hey, we need a little robotic design here. Hey, can you help us with that? So that was a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. So I could live pretty okay, to be honest. Like, I could pay for my insurance and everything, and do a little thing here and there, but it was very minimal. I mean, don't get me wrong. I couldn't go out and stuff like that, but I could survive, luckily.
Cool. So do you think it's a wise decision for somebody who is maybe not where they're at yet to find and identify that minimum viable income that just enough that they need to get by? Um, so they're not distracted by anything else. You know, you work just enough hours to pay your bills and then you maximize your spare time to do that study.
Exactly, exactly. And like, how much do you really have to work, right? If you work in a restaurant or whatever, like, maybe you're working like a couple nights a week, and that's so many hours left. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't really see how people don't have time enough, unless you're doing a full-time job, right? But you don't need a full-time job to pay a couple bucks every month to stay active.
It might
So,
depend where you live. I gotta say that, but but you're right. You're right on that. Almost
but I mean,
almost
like if you
everywhere.
live, yeah, but dude, like if you, but the situation is different, of course, because if you're living on your own,
Sure.
you need rent, you need to pay rent, and
Yep.
etc. But dude, like the rent I paid here was so almost nothing, dude. It was just like a means to support, like for the food they provide me, etc. Because I was just eating with the family, right?
Right.
So it wasn't anything like, hey, I have to sustain myself in such an extent. It was just like some small fees, but like insurance and everything. That those were the main concerns on my
Sure.
phone bill, etc. So yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. That makes total sense. So, you know, you became a master pancake chef. I'm gonna always remember that because I don't think any. I think you draw. I don't know if anybody knows this about you. So,
Yeah.
so once you had that on lock, you were working on the portfolio. You got the gig at Star Citizen or Foundry 42.
Hmm.
And I also want to say this that because you did get as you mentioned a few small offers for things here and there.
Yeah.
People asking you to design little robotic things here and there. I'm going to go ahead and make an assumption that they only reached out to you for those things because they saw you must have been posting your work already and you must have been sharing that you were doing that type of thing. Is that right?
Definitely. That's definitely right. And I still know in the beginning, also when I started school, was that I was also doing 2D painting, in Photoshop, doing some concepts and everything. But over time, dude, 3D became such a major part. And I've always had this passion for the robotics and all that stuff. So I found my niche pretty quickly, right? And and again, like I have a passion for anything sci-fi, right? Any design or any innovation, I love it. So I can use my skill set um, in any field in terms of, like, if I want to build an interior design or an environment, um, I'll probably get away with it, right? Maybe not as good as people that are in that niche, obviously, but I could gather or I could provide a pretty good service to those indie needs. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, I want to take a little sidebar because of what you said. So when I look at your portfolio, you have a lot of pieces, especially on ArtStation. It's a very cohesive body of work. You know, everything's on a black background. You use a fairly consistent material library. They're all renderings of 3D works that you've produced. It's very much like these days when I see something, I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely Eden's work. And
Thanks.
yeah, no problem. But like so you have that aesthetic, like, and you found that as you mentioned pretty quickly. Now there's a lot of people who are also trying to improve and create, imagery, 3D work, rendering, stuff like that. And sci-fi is undeniably hot right now. There are a few big names who are really pushing it. You got quite a few like blockbusters coming out each year. A question that I have that's, really just opinion based, is it getting crowded? Are you getting a little bit sick of seeing lots and lots of somewhat similar looking sci-fi accessories, characters, weapons, props? I'm just curious about what you feel about that.
Hmm. Well, that's an interesting question, definitely. I think, and yeah, like I don't really often check on the trending walls, etc., and like the mosaics of ArtStation anymore. Like I have a couple of people that I follow, and I'd rather look at the following page and see what my buddies have produced, right? And
Okay.
occasionally I'll check and see what's out there, because I feel that everyone is victim of trends, and if something is hot, people will make it, and that's all you see. Um, so I guess an important question to clarify a bit more. Are you talking specifically about trending stuff, or are you talking about too many artists joining this concept art industry in general?
It's somewhere between those two. So I understand that distinction, but what I'm asking about is like, I'll actually take it a little bit more from kind of a personal point of view, and that's like
Okay.
I see, let's say I see some work from somebody I follow, and I'm like, that is just so cool. Like
Mhm.
I get that like momentary inspiration where I'm like, I need to go do something like this. But then I start feeling cheap because I'm like, well, how do you manage inspiration without feeling like you're just you don't want it's like you don't want anyone to go like, oh, you're just ripping off so and so. But it's
Mhm.
even on a more of a level, like even if you could get away with it without somebody calling you out, you still feel like I don't want to feel like I'm doing that as well. So like, have
Mm.
you ever felt or recognized that? Like, because I feel like a lot of people who aren't one of the few who are kind of trailblazing a certain genre, I feel like everyone else who's not at that level but still enjoys that type of art or design work, there, it's just going to happen. You're going to feel that on some level.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I do have to agree with that. Um, I think when I look at work, generally this is how I see it. Even if it sounds nice or not, right? So, for example, if we see Vitali or whoever like that's so good,
Hmm.
create like a mech or a robot. Undeniably, there will be a couple of fans or people that are very inspired and try to do something similar, and you'll also see that on the wall. But rarely or close to never have I seen that inspiration driven work be surpassing the original, right?
Yeah, of course. Right.
So once I can identify and locate the source of where these trends are coming from, I'll follow those. And as for people creating similar work, either it is from this inner drive that just wants them to make something similar after seeing something, dude. Like, I'm totally fine with it. Um, but ultimately, this is a phase. Like, even I had a phase where, when I started out, I was checking out different artists, extracting what I liked, trying to apply it to my own. Maybe this is a bit too much rip, maybe this is too less, and this is just right. So everyone goes through that phase. So I totally understand that and never hate on that, right? But ultimately, what I would like to see is everyone to be himself, right?
Hmm.
And I'm pretty happy that I think, I'm still trying to develop it, but I'm happy, I guess, that I'm at least trying to follow my own aesthetic and my own style. And obviously, it takes some time to follow or to form this. But ultimately, if people try and do this themselves, just imagine how diverse and nice the wall would look like,
Hmm.
right? So
Sure.
I do agree. It could be less, maybe.
So, do you do anything or do you have any tips for somebody who feels like it's like every time they get pumped up about something because they're seeing work by other amazing artists, um, but they feel like they don't have anything original to offer? Do you have any guidance or strategies that they can start creating something without being worried about the perception of being a follower?
Mm, definitely. Like, there also a point that I want to make, that needs to be distinguished, and this is very important, is, let's say you have an artist that is very well known for his realistic industrial military designs,
Hmm.
right? And you see like the parts and components that he's using, like hexapods, hydraulics, all these cool parts that make the design look super realistic. Um, if then person B is coming with a piece that is may be similar in nature and also happens to use proven mechanical solutions like hydraulics and hexapods and whatever, that doesn't mean that person B is ripping off A, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So very important to make that distinction, and because you cannot patent real technology,
Right,
because
like a bolt or a screw, right?
yeah, because person A also took that from real life.
Sure.
So this is very important. So if you say like, hey, like this is a ripoff of his, uh, think about what you're saying and what you're claiming, because a lot of stuff is actually taken from somewhere else, you know. And isn't that a saying that the best artists or something steal the best, or hide it the best, or whatever?
Right. Yep.
Um, so after you know that, you don't have to worry as much about using certain techniques that are proven systems that you can use, and it would be dumb to not use them because someone else is doing that. And you know, you're not going to drive a car with square tires, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know that the round ones work.
Right.
So stick to that. But after that, try and get your knowledge from real sources. Don't if you need to do research for a robot, you need like to make some type of joint in the shoulder. Don't look at the reference. Don't look at other artists, because undoubtedly their uh, their iterations that they've seen from real life, obviously, well, most of the time they go down a notch in realism and function, right? Because
Sure.
whatever they did, maybe it's not supposed to be like that in real life. So go to the real source. Try and study why something is moving the way it does. Try and understand why a piece of aluminum that is being CNC'd has a different aesthetic than a piece of molded plastic, and try and learn for what they are used. Maybe maybe a weapon body that is made from a block of aluminum is more durable. But you also got to understand that polymers can be stronger than metal, and it's way cheaper, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do this type of research, and then come solve the problems on your own without looking at other people, and try and come with solutions that you've researched and you've come up with. I think this is the best way to set a foundation. And now, if you have the foundation and general problem solving skills with your own visual library that you've acquired over time doing research, then it's fine to objectively study another person. Be like, all right, so what do I like about this person? Do I like, you can't just say I like the entire piece.
Right.
Usually for me, that is, I like a piece because I can see something I can use for myself. And that's like, if there is a piece of art, doesn't matter how beautiful it is, if I don't see something that is for my personal gain, usually I'm not really excited. I'll be like, oh my God, like this oil painting is so beautiful. I love it. I'll hang it in my wall. Um, but if I'm looking at a piece of design that I can't extrapolate on or can't extract anything from, I should rather say, it becomes pretty dull for me. So I think it's a kind of a selfish kind of feeling, a self-improvement system internally, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think that too may be getting at the heart of what inspiration is, because when I see a piece of work, an art, a design or something, and I feel inspired by it, I'm like, that speaks to me. I want to remix that like on my own. So, pull a little bit from it or something like that. Um, I guess it's probably similar to like an MC if he hears like a sample and he's like, that, I want that in my next thing, and it's not because he's taking it, but he sees a new way to transform it and use it, I think. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if that's quite on the same level, but I do understand the point that you're bringing up. Um, and to the point earlier about like, you shouldn't feel bad about taking and using technology whether it's a mechanical device or a fastener or a joint or an actuator or something. It sounds like you can, let's say you kind of create the, again, we'll say a robot or some sort of a mech type feature. Once those mechanics that allow it to stand up or move the way it needs to or function the way it functions, I think then what it sounds like you mentioned earlier is like those are the things that need to be there. Those are like the hard points. Like a car needs four wheels, okay? So you're not going to say you ripped off another car because it has four wheels, but it's the body, the design of it, that really is going to determine the design, so to speak. And so you don't want to be pulling design language like the exact same forms and silhouettes that somebody else is using for their designs, because that in and of itself, those are the flexible areas where it is truly up to you and your creativity to design that. And I think if you're avoiding borrowing or taking those forms from somebody else, you should be okay. Is that, would you agree with that?
Definitely. And sometimes you also get parallel thinking, right?
Sure.
Like, let's say I'm making like a defensive military robot, and I think of let's say I want to make like an projectile system. Would I put it underneath? No, because it needs areas to scan, right? So it's probably gonna be on top. And the other artist probably had the same thought process and also put it somewhere on top. And we both did research on how IO scanners look like. And probably there's solutions are going to look the same. Same kind of optics, same kind of scanner. So you can't really give people too much of a hard time when some stuff is looking similar, because some objects just don't have a lot of parameters to play around with.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And also with the advent of design, everyone's using really capable hardware, really capable programs. And you're starting to, everything, whether it's video games or the entertainment industry, products, the level of the attention to detail, as well as the level of realism in the visuals, in the designs themselves, everything is becoming more and more viable. We're at that level where you can practically hit a button, print your 3D designs, or create them, machine them, mill them, whatever. So I think out of necessity, everybody's work is getting more and more realistic. And when it gets more realistic, as you mentioned, there are fewer and fewer viable answers to certain problems or designs.
Yeah, unless you're like a true innovator and engineer and come up with a working system, right? Mm-hmm. But this only goes for people that are, whose designs are not necessarily too far in the future, where new tech could be ruling every form of actuation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it kind of drifts around a certain time period, not too far, right?
Yep, near off future. Well, that's really cool. I really like this, because we've gotten at the heart of a lot of topics that can be stumbling points, not just for younger designers, but really anyone, I think, in their career, whether they're catching a second wind, they're trying to up their game, maybe they're trying to get their first job, or maybe they're just trying to shift their focus. I think these are all really good topics that, each one could be dived into really far. So if we back up a little bit, what are the tools that you're using on a regular basis? I know we've hinted at a few of them, but what are the tools that you're using today?
What I have on my shelf are Photoshop, Illustrator, Maya, ZBrush, Moy, Marvelous Designer, Make Human, some RealFlow by Autodesk. Yeah, a couple of odd programs that I use for certain purposes, but generally, like the two main working horses are Maya and Moy 3D.
Okay, and then I have an understanding of the differences between these two programs. However, would you mind sharing with somebody who maybe they they sound basically the same thing. Can you kind of tell them why you use them and what differentiates them?
Yeah, so basically, Maya is a polygonal software, and Moy 3D is a CAD software. So instead of working with surfaces with planes that each have vertices that have to be connected together to create a shell, CAD software is working with solids. So what you're getting represented on the screen represents a solid, so a piece with mass. So that therefore you cannot really take a vertice and pull it around, right? You have to cut it like it's a piece of steel. That's, I think, the easiest way to explain.
Sure, yes. And with CAD too, I think you can work both from like an additive or I guess with both polygonal and modeling, you can work like additive or subtractive methods. But nonetheless, in CAD generally, you're going to be doing things the way you would in real life, basically.
Exactly.
And what type of work do you choose to use each application for?
Hmm. So I like Maya as like a general kind of interface I can interact with. So I can model whatever I need to. I can drop in CAD data that has been converted and assemble the scenes, apply materials, do I can work with curves and cloths and dynamics. So this is kind of the all-round station where I finalize projects in and export from to KeyShot when I do rendering. But I've been using Moy more and more. Whenever I need to design something uh, that it would be used for in real life. Let's say I need to make like a metal frame with a lot of cuts in it. I'm not going to poly model it, you know? Like, why not use the program that it was designed for? So, same goes for ZBrush. If I want to do a sculpture of some sort, or need to put detail on a softer kind of model that I modeled in Maya before, I'll use the sculpting tool. And same with cloth simulation. You know, if I need a drapery or something, I'll go to Marvelous because that's what it's designed for. It's useless to uh, drive a nail with a screwdriver, right? So get the tools right for the job, and you'll be much faster.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. Cool. So with all these programs that you are using on a regular basis, you mentioned quite a few there, and I know that each one has its own learning curve. They're all different environments and stuff. Obviously, there's a fairly large amount of time invested in learning these tools. So where do you go to pick up and learn about a new program?
That is a good question. And definitely what happened for me was I didn't have to get introduced to a lot of packages to make up my mind, right? Because on a regular basis, I get like questions like, "Hey, what should I use? Why do you like this over that?" And I'm not so interested in answering those questions, you know, because every time it comes down to the same thing. If you have access to a few, check them all out and pick the one you like most. But don't look at people's work and then see with what program it was made and then be like, oh my God, if I use that program, I'm going to get the same results. No, 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 that's not how it works. Um, just pick because virtually every 3D package out there is capable of doing the same thing, you know, providing 3D data. And obviously, one has maybe a bit more features, but like interaction is shitty, and the other is very fluid, but then it misses some features. So you have to find the balance. And really, if there isn't a magic button to do a certain shape, learn to do it manually. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And in terms of how long it takes and where you go to learn it, you can take classes online and look at proven courses that are well received and courses that people like. You could invest in those because I think that'll help more than looking at a free tutorial on YouTube by some by some Indian guy or whatever. He, I think it's smarter to invest your money and learn it faster doing a course. Or if you have time, you can just download a few, check out which ones you like, and just go from there. Start with something simple and increase accordingly complexity.
Yeah,
So.
that makes sense. Do you have any names you'd like to drop as far as specific courses or websites or educators who provide courses? Have you had luck with anything in particular?
Um, well, I'm not the right one to ask because I never really did a course.
Okay.
But I think that in terms of like, if someone would ask me right now, hey, I need to pick up a program and I want to get into the industry, what should I pick? Even though I use Maya and everything, I would probably tell that person pick up Blender, right? It's free to use and it gets updated uh, on a daily basis, so that's kind of crazy. Um, it gets support. The support community is huge, so that's absolutely to be saluted. Um, and you can never go wrong with that, to be honest, because Maya, it's an expensive license, um, and the subscription models are really going crazy. So Blender would be the good thing, and there are a ton of resources for Blender. And I don't know, but aren't there like courses? Like Noman has some good courses, I think, and maybe they're a bit dated. I don't know if they're still updated regularly, but I think Noman has some good quality. And other than that, dude, like I don't know of any names at this time that I can drop because I never really did courses. So it's kind of like I don't feel certified to answer this.
Fair enough. Have you learned the programs that you're using? Have you done so just by reading up or piecing together videos and stuff, or just exploring on your own?
Yeah, definitely a mixture of everything.
Okay.
So, obviously exploring and trying to, not be lazy and try to dig a little bit deeper yourself. I think that comes a long way because, being persistent pays off definitely. And then let's say there is a tool or a glitch or a bug, or maybe I clicked a button and I don't know what the hell happened. I'll go do my troubleshooting. I'll just go online and type in the exact problem that I have, or I type in the function that I'm looking for, and that way, you'll always find it 9 out of 10 times. You'll find the solution yourself without having the need to ask a buddy or having to experience problems. And I do have to say though, like that for Moy, there's also a pretty huge, or not huge, but very helpful, resourceful community behind it, with a lot of nice scripts and a lot of nice optimizations for the program. Um, and all that, I think, combined, makes it very easy to get into a program.
Got it.
So,
Okay. And that's really cool. I like the recommendations, and you're the second person within 24 hours who I've heard recommend Blender from a standpoint of accessibility and amount of learning materials.
hmm
Um, I've used it occasionally for some very small things here and there, but hearing it more and more is making me really interested in giving it a shot, learning it.
dude, definitely. Blender, I mean, like even though I don't really like to use it because of its navigation and everything. I mean, I gotta give credit to it. That's the program I would recommend someone that's getting into this. Also, what is really cool is a lot of very nice scripts and support is being realized at the moment. And a good friend of mine, Jerry Perkins, is majorly responsible for a plugin called HardOps and Box Cutter. And these programs make it so easy to create high complexity cuts and booleans inside of polygonal modeling software. So very impressed with that, and I, quite frank, wish it was also available for Maya. Um, but yeah, I'll have to move over to Blender for that. So
Yeah. So for those who are not familiar with what a script is, um, why should they care? Why is that worth bringing up?
so um, I mean, right out of the box, a program can only do so much, and there are a lot of nifty people. Um, that recognize problems or recognize what can be optimized and go do something about it. They're not waiting for the tech support that's usually very slow. They're not waiting for anyone but to come up with a solution themselves. And one of the major beefs in polygonal software is like making the cuts, making the CAD like booleans inside of that software. And Hard Ops and Jerry Perkins really did a good job of creating a plugin that is very slick and gets the job done pretty well. So definitely put this in the list of links on this podcast episode page if you can.
Yeah, I've been taking notes, and those are definitely on my page already, so we're good.
Great.
Yeah, so the Booleans, and also again, because I realize there's a lot of terms that some people might not be familiar with. A Boolean is just when you take one body and you overlap it with another body and you subtract one volume from another. So if you can think of, if it's easy to model the head of, or the tip of a screwdriver, and then you intersect it with another kind of round shape, and you Boolean it, you end up with two parts that fit together, and you basically get the negative part in the head of the screw or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one very easy way to explain it is like you have a target body
Mhm.
and you have the Boolean body that you're going to place in the target body in whatever shape you want. You can cut in. So this allows for very fast shape creation and form creation that otherwise would have taken a very long time to model by hand. So cutting away and adding and intersecting is very fast for pipeline.
And that's a huge part of the Moi workflow, as far as I understand, right?
Definitely, and and again, um, the box cutter script and
Hmm.
CAD software and all these Boolean based operations are only useful um, majority wise if you want to create objects that share that manufacturing process. You're not going to make a soft
Hmm.
sculpt using Boolean software. So we're only talking about objects that benefit from this process.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. So nowadays you're working on a project with or for NVIDIA, right?
Well, basically, what I do is I work at NVIDIA for periods of time. Like there are gaps in between.
Hmm.
Uh, either uh, either there's no concept work to be done because they have to be able to. They need time to convert everything into assets. Because I can't really say what's going on, but um, so I work in periods over there, and in the time and for the time in between, I'm doing other projects that I have time to work on. If I get the time to work on them, and right now actually, I'm working on a movie, on a film. So it's not really much. Oh yeah, and next to that, I'm still working with uh, on the weapons parts that I'm doing at the moment. But other than that, it's I have my hands full on those couple. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you had a movie come out, a movie came out recently that you were involved with. Is there one or two of them that you've already done?
Two. One is Logan, and the other is Passengers.
That's
So
right. Okay, very cool. So, to anyone who's seen those, I'm sure when they look at your any work that you might have been able to share about those, I'm sure they'll be able to connect the dots and see what
Hmm.
what you did.
I
Um,
hope so. Yeah.
so that's really cool. And did you ever think that you'd be working on films a few years? Like, I mean, I guess you
Mm,
probably started working doing the Logan work quite a long
well,
time ago, right?
it's like I've always wanted to, um, but I think I wasn't like, oh, I'm good enough to work on a movie, so well, why isn't there any gigs coming? You know, not like that. I think, I mean, I've always wanted it to happen, but then when it happened, I didn't expect it. That's how I should say it, I guess. And I was very happy. And Logan was the first movie I worked on, and that was in 2015. You know, that was late 2015, right after I quit Star Citizen.
Wow.
So that was super cool. And you know, I wish I could do a bit more on movies, but you know, when you're not in the union or anything like that, I think it's a little more complicated. And then therefore, your way into movies is either through like a vendor, you know, like a VFX vendor, or like through Weta,
Uh-huh. Sure.
because they get the contracts. So it's kind of hard unless you're in union. But if I could, I would definitely want to work more on movies. Definitely.
Okay. Did those opportunities come out of your online portfolio? Did you just receive an email type thing?
Exactly. So for example, for Logan, I was hired directly by 20th Century Fox, and to come back to that whole union point, basically, the production designer contacted me, and he knew that I wasn't in the union, so we had to figure that out. And first, I had to get like an approval of the board if it was okay for an outsider to work on it. And then finally we got the okay, and then I could sign the contract. But so now you see how hard it is to actually even start, right? Even though
Sure.
they want you, you need an approval, blah blah blah. So I was very happy and fortunate to be able to work on it.
Excellent. Cool. And then are there any upcoming projects that I mean, since you can't talk about what's being worked on now, what areas over the next year or two are you most excited to be doing work in? Like what type of projects, not necessarily who do you want to work with or
Hmm.
but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that has been on my mind a lot is to push the Edon Tech Industries brand and identity, and see with whom I succeed together, right? And next to that, one thing that I'm really wanting to do and spend more time on is creating my prototype desk toys or desk displays. So basically, I partnered up with, or not partnered up, I commissioned them, you know, I'm paying everything, sadly. But I found a company that provides 3D prints for hospitals in a surgical application, right?
Hmm.
So it's very high quality prints, 3D prints, very organic shapes, also very cool titanium printing and everything. So it's kind of a hardcore type of service that they provide, which is also very expensive. But I don't want to settle for less, right? If something that I design that is intricate of nature also needs to be intricately made with the high quality materials, in my opinion. So I want to do it right, so to speak, the first time. So I have this robotic arm that I haven't shared before, that no one has seen, and I want to print it out until the elbow and a little bit further, one to one, and put it on my desk,
Wow.
fully branded and everything. And I don't know what degree of articulation it will get, but definitely not a stiff prop. It needs some articulation for display purposes. So that's the one thing I'm working on. But prior to that, because you know this robotic arm contains a lot of pieces, I designed a small submachine, uh, kind of submachine gun, right? And this is a pretty compact sci-fi design, and it's not working in terms of, you know, it has all the parts, but you know, you can rack the bolt and it'll strip around into the chamber and extract it and eject it, you know, this
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Cool.
So it's a pretty highly functional prop. So that's what I'm focusing on right now because it has less parts and it allows me to learn enough before I move on to the ARM. So these are things that I want to complete because I actually started on that last year and then things got in the way. So I want to realize that and publish it. So
Sure. And then, what do you? So you're really comfortable in your 3D programs. You're able to represent on screen exactly what you want. What's it like making the leap from that to 3D printed? Are you having to learn? Are you having to tweak your models a whole lot? Are you having to learn other programs or anything?
um, one of the only considerations that I had to go through when I created the arm and a weapon is these physical constraints. Like the print bed is only so big. I mean, they have huge print beds, so I could even like print half a leg or something in one. So that's pretty cool. But um, wall thickness, stress points, cooling. If you have a very large surface that has a different thickness going across, it'll cool differently. You'll get like a weird warp or a weird coloration. All these things I had to consider. And now, luckily, it was less than I expected because the people warned me, at the firm,
Mm, okay.
like, hey, this is important to notice and blah blah blah. But I think we're going to be fine, and not much had to be done to accommodate for these parameters. So I'm very happy about that. But dude, seeing something being realized is is such a cool thing. Like, obviously, if you're making a mech and you see it move and walk in a movie in cinema, it's super cool. But if you have, like, for example, the muzzle brake that I designed, it's out there in quite the numbers, and people are using it on their rifles, and it works really well. And I'm super happy about that. There's just something that you cannot explain. Um, so yeah, turning something from your brain into the physical dimension is definitely something special.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on being able to experience that, and then
Well,
also kind of
thanks, dude.
deciding. Yeah, of course. I mean, it seems like it's a cool opportunity, or cool that you can choose to finish up some of these projects where you've wanted to just breathe more life into these concepts that you had, which is really, that'll be really cool.
Mm.
Well, man, you shared a lot. I really appreciate it, and it's been really good. I think a lot of people are going to dig this episode. Do you have any kind of any closing tips or thoughts on just in general on living life on your terms? I mean, it seems like you gave us lots of examples. Anyone who is paying attention could pick up on how you did it. But do you have any kind of closing thoughts or remarks on that?
Um, yeah, I guess so. You know, um, and it might sound cliche because I feel like, you know, people that can sing really well or whatever, they'll be like, don't listen to the naysayers, do what you love, etc. And then people will kind of laugh because of how generic that sounds. But you know what? There is a reason people say that. It's true. Like you really have to not give a fuck about what everyone thinks. Nothing. Like if you like to make robots or unicorns or whatever, and and you like doing that, there is nothing in this world that can stop you, right? I mean, the one freedom that we have, please use it. Please do something that makes you happy and that you want to excel in and pursue the passion because I believe that, um, for all we know, we're only here once. And it would be such a shame to look back at your life and be like, hey, I actually wanted to do this. You know what? Like, it's not even a big issue if you try to do something that you thought was cool and then found out you didn't like or that it wasn't for you, but at least you tried, instead of never having tried it and then always sitting with that feeling. And again, like if you have a passion or if you have something that you like, please don't listen to everyone, to anyone. Surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that are as ambitious. Because let me tell you, if you surround yourself with people that don't share the same ideals, or not really ideals, right? Like everyone can have different opinions, even political, whatever, and still have the same drive and ambition. What I'm saying is surround yourself with people that have the same mindset, whatever it is. Um, be familiar, like get together with people that know how you feel and know what you and understand what you also want in life, because you don't want to get held back by people that have different ideas or different feelings about things. So again, like do what you love and fuck everything else.
I love it, man. Thanks for sharing that. For those who are still listening, where can people find you online?
I'm on a different few platforms. I have an art station. I have my own website. I have Instagram. I even have a LinkedIn and DeviantArt. But I'm not really much on DeviantArt, to be honest. It's kind of the place for furries and everything. So, but yeah, you got to stay relevant everywhere. So I keep it updated occasionally. But yeah, that's where I'm at, and also on Facebook. So you can add me there and share the links on the page so people can find me.
I will do that. And where the listeners need to go is cgipodcast.com/episode/8. So this will be episode 8. Anyone who's listening, make sure you go to cgipodcast.com/episode/8, and you'll get all the show notes. You'll get to see some of Edon's work. And what we're going to do is make sure we link everything up. And, I'm hoping to hear some feedback, hear what you guys thought. Man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you taking a sizable chunk out of your day to share with myself and the listeners. Maybe in the future there'll be another time. But
definitely will. Definitely, I would like to take this opportunity as well to thank you for this episode and this opportunity. And it was really great talking. And yeah, I'm very honored to be on this. So thank you again.
All right, man. The pleasure's mine. Take care.
All right, man. Bye-bye.
There it is, guys. Another episode in the books, this time with concept designer Edon Guraziu. If you have a moment, I'm going to do the thing where I ask you to hop on iTunes, leave a review, and maybe make sure that you're subscribed if you're listening to this for the very first time, or maybe you came across this on YouTube. And if you want to get in touch and recommend other guests for future podcasts, make sure you drop me an email, and you can get in touch and do that on cgipodcast.com. Go to the About page. There's a little contact form there. I hope I hear from you. And just in general, if you've got feedback, let me know. We want to improve these with each and every episode, so we can't do that without understanding what you guys want. So speak up. Let's make it happen. Until next time, this is Will Gibbons, signing off.